Everyone. Today we have another guest lecture, and the title of this lecture is The Hegemony of the Dollar and the Challenge of the BRICS. And it will be a lecture taught by Professor Lucio Gobbi from the University of Trento. Lucio is author of two very relevant papers together with Luca Fantacci that are part of your references for the final examination. And it will continue the analysis of the future of the monetary economic system, international monetary system that we started during this third part of the course. During the last lecture, Lucio, I will introduce some problems with cryptocurrencies and also some interpretations about the central bank digital currencies as a tool for monetary policy, but also as one of the possible evolution in the reorganization of the international monetary system. So the floor is yours, and thank you very much for having accepted my invitation.
Thank you very much, Stefano. The pleasure is all mine. And we will come back to cryptocurrency at the end of this lecture. First of all, what is the international monetary system, and more precisely, what we're talking about when we talk about the dollar hegemony and how we could measure this kind of measure of hegemony, and therefore we'll start talking about the monetary function in the global economy, and particular when a currency is the hegemon in the international monetary system. In the slide, you can see a table in which in each column there is the function of the currency, and it could be, as you know, the store of value, the mean of exchange, and a unit of account. And on the other end, on the rows, you can see whether the use of the currency is public or private. So we could say that the ability of an international currency to serve as an international one can be measured by the degree to which it serves the basic monetary function of reserve asset, unit of account, and the means of payment. Now we'll try to fill each box of this table. First of all, official reserve. So we are talking about the public function, and here you could see in the graph what the share of the currency detained as a reserve in the central bank. So the orange one is the color that represents the share of the dollar. As you can see, the dollar is the hegemon on this matrix, and during time, the time series goes from the 1999 to 2022. We can say that dollar has lost some portion of reserves, but anyway, it remains the first currency detained as a reserve. The blue one is the euro, and we could see how the euro at the beginning, at the inception of the euro as the currency of the European Union, the euro tend to increase its share, but then after the sovereign crisis of 2011 and after even the financial crisis of 2007, it tended to reduce its share. Then another important characteristic of this chart is that we could see how about at 2017 it appears also the Chinese currency as a reserve currency. The renminbi is the red one. So when we talk about dollar hegemony, we could say that under this matrix, the dollar is an hegemon reserve currency. So, summing up, so the International Monetary Fund's statistics on the composition of foreign reserve, exchange reserve, show the relative importance of the major currency as a reserve asset from the central bank, as we have just said. However, the increasing share of the US dollar mainly reflects the decreasing share, mainly reflects the rise of smaller currency, like, for example, we said the Chinese renminbi, but also the Canadian dollar or the Australian dollar. So we could see the fact that even if the dollar has lost some shares, but this share has not gained by the euro or by the yen, but it has been fragmented among the other currency, with the exception of the yuan. Yuan has increased its share. Furthermore, there are of the closer thread. Okay, we have already said. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we may hear you very well.
Okay. Now, in the graph here, you could see the swap line. And what is a swap line, or better, a currency swap line? A currency swap line is an agreement between two central banks to exchange their respective currencies. And this allows a central bank to obtain foreign currency liquidity from the central bank that issue it, and usually because they need to provide this to the domestic bank. So the graph represents the swap line between the European the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank. In the first graphic, you can see the global financial crisis of 2007. And obviously, the Fed was a central bank who provided a lot of liquidity in the international monetary system. And on the other hand, we have the COVID crisis, in which almost only the Fed opened swap line to provide liquidity to other country. So, given that we are talking about mean of exchanges among in the public part of our table, and that we could say how by means of the swap line, central bank exchange means of payments. Now, Summing up, the US dollar reserves are mostly used by foreign central bank to support domestic currency and to refinance local commercial banks. As we said, this is the main function when a central bank open a swap line in the modern central banking. During the 60s and the 70s, usually swap line were open by global north banks to the global south bank in order to lend liquidity. But nowadays, also central banks of global north tend to rely on swap line, usually open by the Fed. So the role of the US dollar as an instrument of central bank intervention has been greatly enhanced by the Fed willingness to provide swap line to the other central bank around the world. And finally, these swap lines are the means of payment provided by the central bank to enable them to act as a lender of last resort in emergency cases. So, such as the banking crisis or currency crisis. So, this is for what concern the means of payment and the public analysis, this is how central banks exchanges liquidity. Now, for what concerns the third function of money, we have to consider the unit of account. So sometimes a currency tend to anchor its value by means of the exchange rate, or sometimes in a case in which a currency, even a foreign currency, is used in a national currency as a relevant currency. For example, here we are talking about dollarized economy, but usually when we talk about anchor currency, is a currency that on which other currency peg the value of their money. And looking at the graph, we have the time series that goes from 1950 to 2015, and on the horizontal axis we have the percentage of currency that are pegged to the considered one. And even in this case, we could see how the US dollar is the hegemon for what concerns the currencies that anchor their value to the US dollar. If this share decreases a little bit after the demise of the Bretton Woods system, because it was a fixed exchange regime in which all the currency were pegged to the dollar and the dollar were pegged to gold. And the euro appears at the inception of 2000s, and before this period, the two hegemon currency, with the exception of gold, were the French franc and the German mark. So, another measure of currency important within the international monetary system is the degree to which it is used as an anchor or reference for the other currency. So nowadays we could say that about the 70% of the world gross GDP product belong to countries which have a peg to the dollar. And while for what concerns the euro, which is the second currency, as we have seen, for what concerns the store of value, only 50% of global currency are pegged to the euro. And for sure, obviously, other countries has a lower percentage of currencies that are pegged to it. Does anybody have a question? So now we are complete for what concerns the public use of a currency. Means of store of value, means of payment, and unit of account. For what concerns the public use. For what concerns the private use, like for example, the use of banknotes outside the domestic system, you could see how, for what concerns the dollar, more than 40% of the dollar today's are used outside the United States, and this share has increased after the financial crisis of 2007. There is a lot of demand of banknotes. We are not talking about deposit M1 or other kind of currency. Here we are talking about M0. We are talking about cash. And so this is another metric in which the dollar is the predominant one. For example, in the box, you can read that by comparison, the euro cumulative shipment outside the eurozone were around that 157 billion in 2021, which is an amount much lower respect to the dollar, and the euro is the second currency used by as a reserve valued by private agents. So that we can say that the international use of the dollar is also reflected in the amount of physical currency circulating worldwide in the form of banknotes. And dollar notes circulating outside the US has increased over the past 2 decades from the 36% to 45% in 2021. And finally, although the use of banknotes is by definition untraceable, it can be assumed that this amount is mostly used by private operators as a store of value.
The idea is to maintain liquidity. So this data that you are commented until now cannot be referred to real transaction.
Exactly. For sure, Stefano, we have told you about the preference for liquidity in the Keynesian economics. Here, there is a typical preference of liquidity for storing cash.
And for the hegemonic currency.
Yes.
Because the idea is that
in the global south.
Yeah, at global level, the idea is that when you have in your as cash an hegemonic currency, everyone will accept it.
Yes. Now, for what concern the means of payment, here you can see the share of cross-border payments that pass through the SWIFT platform. SWIFT is a payment system in which there are the cross-border payments are tracked. not all cross-border payment, but for example, in 2020, almost the vast majority, more than 90% of cross-border payments. But nowadays is a little bit less because some countries, like for example Russia, which has been eaten by sanction, are not more tracked within the system payment. But anyway, May 2024, the share of the dollar is more than 45%. By far, the principal currency, and it wasn't like that in 2020, where the euro and the dollar were approximately the same share. So during time, particularly also considering the Russian crisis in Ukraine, we could see how the Europe has lost part of its value. Another important thing that the Chinese renminbi has increased from about 2% to approximately 4.5%. So the dollar also remained dominant as an international settlement medium, means of payment, as measured by transaction volumes within the SWIFT network, albeit is a smaller margin than in the past. Well, this is smaller. No, the dollar. This is an error. No, sorry. The comparison between, no, it is an error. Sorry, it's a typo. It's always been the first international means of account used in the cross-border payment. Furthermore, when we talk about unit of account, we could think to two types of market: real market and financial market. For what concern real market, here in the chart you can see what the invoicing of exportation to some specific area of geographical area. For example, so in the Americans, the exportation denominated in dollar are by far more than 90% in dollar. So North America and South America, the exportation tend to be denominated in dollar. For what concerns even in Asia, a region in which there is the yen in Japan and the renminbi in China, but also the rupee in India, the vast majority of payments are conducted for what concerns the exportation in dollar. The Europe is the only region in the world in which the dollar is not dominant, because the dominant currency for exportation is the euro. And finally, the rest of the world, in particular Africa and Middle East, the dollar is also hegemon. So the last monetary function involves the use of currency as a unit of account to denominate international trade and financial relationship. We will see in a while the financial relationship. Until now, we have seen also the exportation that represent a real market transaction. But we will see in a while the financial part of the story. So the dollar share in denomination of trade transaction largely reflects its use as a means of payment. And we have already described the chart. However, and it is even more important than the real market when we talk, given that we are talking about a financial asset, that because money is a financial asset, and the most important financial asset in a financial system. And we could say that how in this chart we see how it is important the role of the dollar in the financial system, and we will look at bank security, bank asset, and market asset. For what concerns the banking asset, the US dollar is the prevalent one in 2020 along all the series, but it reached the highest point in 2017. But even in the last period of our time series, 2020, it was more higher than the 50%. You could see also how the euro has increased its role, but after the sovereign debt crisis decreases steadily its share. Furthermore, there are an increase in the part dealing with other countries, and in which there are the China, but also all the other currency in the world. So denomination of bank account, which currency are denominated the bank account, and here you could see what the currency composition of bonds. So here we are talking about securities, and in particular about bonds, both private and public bonds. And again, we can observe how approximately from 2000 and 2005, the role of the euro increases a lot, and then we could observe a divergence between the two dynamics, and nowadays the dollar is by far the currency most employed in denominating financial assets. So it was the first part of this lecture, in which we started asking ourselves, what does it mean that a currency is an hegemon? We always read in the newspaper, in Financial Times, in Wall Street Journal, in Italian Page Journal, or whatever, that the dollar is losing its power. But looking at all these dimensions, we could see how it is not true. And the only weaknesses in the dynamics that we have considered is in the store of value in the official part of the column, because the reserve in dollar has a decreasing dynamic, but it is also the 59% of the official reserve detained in the central bank. So when you look at the journals and your newspaper and you see the dollar is weakening, well, it's not like that. It's not like that. And even in the recent year, in 2023 and 2024, the role of the dollar is strengthened. Does anybody have a question about this fourth part?
Have you any question about the sport? Okay. Curiosity? No, you may go on.
Stefano?
You may go on.
Okay. Now, the second part of the lectures deal with the rise of some players, some important players, the BRICS community in the international monetary system, and in this way we could also explain why there are a lot of talk about the rise of community and countries that will or could challenge the role of the dollar. So, first of all, our story starts in 2009, and after the big crisis of 2007-2009, we had the biggest crisis in the history of capitalism that create a lot of turmoil in all the part of the world. From the demise of the Soviet Union to the crisis of 2010, it seemed that the globalization process led by the United States were the best way to manage real and financial transaction. It was the best system. It has won the Cold War. The process was inevitable. But the system produced by the globalization of real and financial markets produced the biggest crisis ever. Therefore, at that point, a lot of countries claimed to, given that they have shared the burden of the crisis, claim to be more important in the global governance, both economic and financial governance. So here in this and the following one slide, we will read some quotation on the first BRICS meeting. BRICS is the community that is composed by in 2009 by Brazil, China, India, and Russia, and from the 2010 on, even by South Africa. And nowadays also enlarged this community to other countries. So
yes, the magazines are introducing the new notion BRICS Plus to indicate the enlargement of BRICS with Saudi Arab, Emirates,
Iran,
Ethiopia.
But we will see a table for different metrics. So we read just this couple of sentences in order to give you an idea when started during the financial crisis of 2007, the idea to challenge the global governance, economic and financial governance. So, BRICS declaration, we have agreed upon steps to promote dialogue and cooperation among our countries in an incremental, proactive, pragmatic, open and transparent way. The dialogue and cooperation of the BRICS countries is conducted not only to serving a common interest of emerging market and developing countries, but also to building an harmonious world of lasting peace and common prosperity. So this is the first declaration of the BRICS. And for what concerns the financial governance, we will strive to achieve an ambitious conclusion to the ongoing and long overdue reform of the Bretton Woods institution. So the global governance in the financial system. And the IMF and the World Bank urgently need to address their legitimacy deficit. Reforming this institution governance structures requires, first and foremost, a substantial shift in the voting power in favor of emerging market economies and developing countries to bring their participation in decision-making in line with the relative weight of the world economy. So the BRICS is telling us we want to count in the world, in the economic and financial governance, and we want to count in a way that reflects our weight in the global economy. So it's something reasonable. And finally, the last quotation. In interest of promoting international global stability, we have asked our finance minister and central bank governors to look into regional monetary arrangement and discuss modalities of cooperation between our countries in this area. And this is important, in regional monetary arrangement, because it will return and with even more emphasis during in the following year. In order to facilitate trade and investment, we will study feasibility of monetary cooperation, including local currency trade settlement arrangement between our countries. So they asked to have more weight in the financial decision, in the financial governance, and they are saying that they will start in 2010 to explore the cooperation in the financial agreement, financial and trade agreement, for what concern also the monetary issues. Sorry. Now, we jump to 2023. Last year, there was a BRICS summit in Johannesburg, and there were a lot of talk about this meeting. Before the meeting started, President Putin claimed that want to launch a global currency, the BRICS currency, so a global currency of the BRICS community. But it wasn't followed by the other countries that tend to prefer another and more reasonable proposal. And so to strengthen the relationship, economic relationship, and also financial relationship in this way, they proposed to regulate another share of bilateral trade in local currency. For example, the trade between China and Russia that usually was settled in the dollar. Well, Russia is not a good because Russia was hit by the sanction, but consider, for example, the trade between China and South Africa. Usually, it has been regulated by means of dollar. They started to say, now we regulate this transaction, this trade transaction, for example, in Chinese renminbi. In this way, they start to de-dollarize the good markets. So the strategy last year was that to try to reduce the share of bilateral trade among the BRICS community denominated in dollar. So in this way, they reduce the power of the dollar, because if you have to demand dollar for each transaction, the demand for dollar remains high and the strength of the dollar is not ampled. And why? And it is important to remind to students why is for United States it's relevant that the demand of the dollar is high. Thinking about the way in which one of the way in which the currency is issued, the simplest one, by means of open market operation. If you remember the simplest macroeconomic model, the ISLM, what happens? That the central bank expand the monetary the monetary base, and at the same time it buy bonds, sovereign bonds by the market, and therefore they expand the amount of dollar, but buying the treasury bonds in the market. So what does it imply? It implies that the demand for the public debt of the United States, whenever the role of the dollar remains the same, remain high, the demand of the United States debt, and an high demand of a bond imply a lower interest rate. You have seen in the ISLM model, there is a market, the financial market were represented only by bonds, and when there is a monetary expansion, the price of the bond increases, and therefore the cost of the debt reduces. It is the same dynamic that happens in the monetary system, and this is the reason why the United States want to exploit this privilege, because their public debt cost lower respect to the other countries, and so the United States are not happy in reducing their role in the international financial system. Is it clear? Is it clear? This is explanation.
Yes.
Okay.
Marcus
Okay.
is clear. Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Just a little note. Obviously, this kind of results may be easily reached in the field of real transaction between the BRICS countries. It is most difficult to reach this kind of results when when these countries want to change the rules in the field of financial transactions. At least because, for example, the infrastructures like SWIFT are under the control of the Western countries.
For sure. And we have seen now, in fact, in the denomination of financial transaction, we have seen the bond market, the dollar, the denomination of security in dollar is the prevalent point.
Yeah. And
now,
just a couple of minutes regarding the real economy. It is just to underline the point to the students. This set of suggestive consideration you did are very relevant also when we try to understand the changes in the market of raw materials, because the fact that China is more and more engaged in Africa in order control the new rare grounds market, the new raw materials that are important for the transition economy, to the green economy. It is connected also with ambition to reorganize the role of the hegemonic currency.
For sure, for sure. Now, I will show you quickly some slides that show the importance of the BRICS community for what concern some metrics. Here you can see that the BRICS community has about the 30% of the global GDP, while for what concerns the G7 countries is about 43%. At the beginning of the 90s, the BRICS share was less than 10%. So you can see how in the production, this community is increasing and even the rate of growth is very, very high. So the claim to participate in the global governance is not misplaced. Now, for what concerns the population, only the BRICS community is about 46% of the total population of the world, and the rate of growth of population tends to be higher than the one of the G7 bloc. Even military expenditures are increasing generally in all the part of the world. The US is the dominant has the dominant share of about 40% of the global military expenditure. And why it is important? Because historically, but even nowadays, the country with the hegemon power is the one who have both the strongest economy, but also the strongest army. And as you can see, the United States is the country with the highest military expenditure. And this is a sort of circle that enhances itself respect to what we have told a few minutes ago. A country which is a reserve currency, the hegemon currency, could finance its debt in an easier way, in a cheaper way respect to the other countries, and that allows them to make more expenditure, more budget expenditure, sometimes to the welfare expenditure, but also addressed to military expenditure. Anyway, there are a lot of countries like China, India, and Russia, and Saudi Arabia belonging to the BRICS community that are a relevant share in the global military expenditure. Like, for example, in Russia, they used every day. For what concerns commodities, as we have just said, here the typical commodities, oil commodity, because the commodity most used in the real markets is dominated. The production of this commodity is dominated by the BRICS countries, and the share is more than 40% are produced by BRICS country. The biggest producer are the Russia and the South Arabia. Now, we have seen the role of reserve in the official reserve. Now, we could see the amount of total reserve of central banks in divided by countries. The highest reserve, official reserve, are held by China, and are both is split in gold and in other currency, and principally in dollar for what concerns China. Other countries stock value the central bank in gold, and we will see now why gold when we talk about sanction to Russia. Here we are, after the invasion of the Ukraine in 2022, the financial system of Russia has been hit by the G7 countries by sanction on its financial system, but also real market sanction. And the most important because it was unexpected, and because it has never been used, this kind of sanction for a big player in the economy. Russia, the Russian reserve held in foreign financial system were frozen by United States, European, the G7 countries. And what did it imply for Russia? For example, first of all, we'll see the amount, the share of the Russian reserve by splitting by currency. The majority of the reserve was held in euro, and then
because we cannot read well. So the euro is the yellow.
Euro is the
block.
Yellow, yes.
Okay, so we have yellow.
Then we have gold.
Gold, US dollar,
then
yuan,
asset
sterling,
in dollar.
and others. And
yes,
this is the share of currencies that composes the reserves in Bank of Russia.
Exactly.
And the second column is the place in which reserves are. Okay.
Yes.
So, for example,
you can see, after the sanction for the Bank of Russia remained almost only the reserve in gold and in yuan, because China did not apply sanction. So a very relevant part of the wealth of the reserve of the Bank of Russia were frozen. And but this action of the G7 community had a potential implication, systemic implication for all the other countries, which has some turmoil or some or potentially could have some troubles with the United States and the G7 bloc. And what triggered this action by the G7 community, that all the central bank of financial system which are not so aligned to the United States start to buy gold, because gold cannot be hit by sanction. And here there is a gold market prices in the last 5 years. As you can see how the price of gold has increased consistently. And one of the factors was the global uncertainty, but this global uncertainty was triggered by the tension among countries. And the central bank of all the countries which do not belong to the G7 community started to buy gold. Even countries in the NATO ally, like for example the Turkey, they start to increase their share of gold. Now,
I may say that reserving gold may reduce the risk to have blocked reserve in dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
In the case, obviously, of contrast with G7 or United States, but it is a very significant signal of the geopolitical tension. And,
exactly.
and it is also a signal that geopolitical tension have always a counterpart in financial operation.
Fine. And here you can see how country non-aligned with the G7 tried to equip itself with the strategy to reduce the dollar and to try to shield of sanction. For example, replacing the US dollar, one of the implications of the greater economic proximity between Russia and India has been the replacement of the US dollar in their intra-trade transaction. We have already told this fact that within the BRICS community they tend to substitute the dollar in the denomination of their invoices and try to settle exportation in, for example, renminbi. For what concerns the system of payment, China built its own system of payment alternative to SWIFT, which is called CHIPS. The Russia did the same with a system called SPFS. So which was something without precedent, the fact that a lot of countries is starting to build their own system of payment because they fear the sanction of the United States and the G7 bloc. A main implication of sanction, so reduce the reliance and the trust on the US dollar as a reserve asset, and we have seen how central banks start to diversify their asset. There has been the development of alternative payment systems, and for what concerns local currency, we have seen that the part of international trade settled in local currency has increased, and some countries have started to redenomination commodity prices, like for example Saudi Arabia. The vast majority of oil of Saudi Arabia is denominated in dollar, but for what concerns the trade with China, is denominated in yuan. Now, to conclude, what happened instead in Kazan 2024, and it has to deal with also cryptocurrency. And now,
just to be precise, it is the last BRICS summit that that was ended in October
or September, I don't remember.
Probably October. Okay.
And here, for the first time, it was abandoned formally the idea to construct a BRICS currency, but the idea was to, yes, why to renounce to the BRICS currency? Because there are technologies that could allow the BRICS community member to exchange their to perform their payments without the need of the international currency, and in particular by means of cryptocurrency, central bank digital currency, and therefore we are in the world in which there is no need to have an international currency or a global currency. So the first major change respect to the past is that there is no longer any talk about introducing the new international currency. Now, as the BRICS document states, technological advances are making it possible to democratize the current procedure, as demonstrated by the emergence of peer-to-peer markets that facilitate the exchange between currencies and cryptocurrencies. So now payment processed by means of a blockchain and the decentralized system allow to avoid the need of an international currency. So linking the payment of two different central bank by means of a central bank digital currency could nullify the need of an international currency. And this is the conclusion of the document of this year meeting of the BRICS country. So we started talking about which is the hegemon, the dollar. By far, the dollar is already the hegemon. We have seen that in a real market, there are some countries that are catching up in a very fast way with the G7 community. And they will be overtake the G7 community within 10 years. They share in the real market. In the financial market, the US are by far the hegemon and probably will remain for a lot of years. But there are, given the technological innovation, there are a lot of countries which are equipping themselves to the new payment system that allows them to not use the dollar. How the US, what is the response of the United States? A few weeks ago, Trump says that all the countries that use this kind of platform will be sanctioned. And this is the state of the art today.
And obviously it will be sanctions, bilateral sanctions, without passing through the WTO.
Yeah, obviously. And I have 10 minutes for the question.
Okay. Have you any questions? Any curiosity or need to clarify some point? Okay, students have no question. I would like just to have some deeper explanation about the role of central bank digital currency in this moment. I didn't read the last BRICS plus document. Is there? But I understand by your notes that there's something about central bank digital currency.
Yes, they are named, but there is not a blueprint of how this new system should work.
But at the moment, inside the BRICS, how many countries are implementing a proper central bank digital currencies?
Only China, but the system has been a lot of trials and verification, but it is not operative yet.
Okay. So it is.
It is a program. It is a program.
But I think that from Johannesburg, we are assisting to some announcement.
Well. In 2010, they announced that if the countries of the core countries, the G7 countries, were deaf respect to their request, they would have organized themselves, and they create the new development bank, which is a source of institutional World Bank, and also some funds which is the replication of the IMF.
Yes,
and now they claim
the major part of the amount of capital of this new banking, new supranational banking system for BRICS are in dollars.
Yes,
Dollars.
not all. There are a part of in the renminbi, the part in rubles, but the big stake is in dollar and in euro.
So it is not easy to interpret this phase.
Yes, that's why they are the hegemon. The United States are the hegemon.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe we may say that China, also by exploiting BRICS, is programming a new hegemony. But we are quite far.
It is the best candidate to do it.
Yeah, it is anyway a program that needs a long run perspective.
Yeah. Yes. Won't happen tomorrow, but probably in 50 years, yes.
Anyway, we have also the reaction of the United States that this is not just a protectionism reduction. It is not just a war trade scenario, but it is also a military scenario, and we are living in these times. Okay, do you want to add something just to conclude?
No, I say thanks to here, but now I have to take a train, and so I say hello and have a good holiday and Christmas.
Okay, happy Christmas also for you, and thank you very much for your lecture.
Okay, hi.